the news, drinking, work, like there's so many avenues of checking out, right? Um,
Mhm.
and so when we check out, we're not staying present, and we're disconnecting from our bodies.
Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset.
If you get one shot at this, what kind of shot are you going to take?
If we forget who we are, they're going to forget who you are.
You've got an adversity story that's out of this world.
Everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer.
Asley, thank you so much for joining us today. You're doing some remarkable stuff in the, I guess, recovery, trauma
Grief and
recovery.
healing. Yeah, grief and
healing.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about your non-for-profit and what it is, what it's named, and how somebody could learn more about you just if they went online?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me today. I'm happy to be here talking about Love Not Lost. So we are a nonprofit organization with a mission to help people heal in grief. And if anyone wants to learn more about us, we can be found online at lovenotlost.org. All of our social media handles are lovenotlost.org without the dot. And then we have a new community that we launched to really bring people together and create a space where we can grieve and heal together. And that is lovewell.impact.app. We also have some tools and resources and stuff like that that you can find on our Love Not Lost website. And then really the other thing that we want to do besides directly showing up for people to heal in grief. So we do, portrait sessions for people facing a terminal diagnosis, and we have photographer volunteers who volunteer with us to make that happen. But we also have tools and resources to really empower the community to show up, right? Because we don't want to be the only ones showing up. We're complete strangers to families oftentimes who apply to get a Love Not Lost session. But we have a free tool called howcaniloveYouBetter.com. And that is designed to be an easy way for someone to ask someone, hey, like, I see you're going through a tough time. What's a tangible way that I can actually show up for you? And you can make custom offerings, like I'll bring you a meal, I'll do your yard work, I'll send you flowers. Like, I don't clean homes, but I'll send someone to clean your home, or like whatever it is that you want to offer, will be sent as a checklist to them. And then that person can be like, actually, yeah, if you want to clean my home Friday at noon, that would be amazing. Or if you want to bring me dinner like Thursday at 5, that'd be awesome. So it's just a way to kind of take out any awkward communication. It's all done via email, so people have time to think and respond. And so, yeah, our goal is really to make sure that everyone feels loved and supported in grief. And so whether it's us showing up or empowering the community to show up, the other piece of Love Not Lost is really providing that grief support and education, because no one's teaching how to heal and how to support others through healing either. So that's another area we're stepping into with our new community.
It's super challenging, the where you're at, on multiple levels. It's super challenging, right? Because it's super
Yeah.
personal. I mean, I
Mhm.
just sitting here, you talking about it, I can think about, some of the losses that I've had in my life, and I start to get choked up right away.
Mhm.
So it's hard. And, for in my life, I've normally been the strong shoulder to cry on during those, for my
Yeah.
mother and sisters and stuff like that. So it is
Yeah.
challenging, and the grief is on both sides. It's for the help, the people helping, and the people that have lost. So, going down this path, um, my emotions are so strange that I giggle a little bit to
Yeah.
not to not go there. So it is a big problem, and
Mhm.
you've experienced a significant loss. Your
Mhm.
daughter had a terminal illness.
Mhm.
Is that the catalyst that starts you down this path, or have you always been an entrepreneurial, give back kind of person?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
In my childhood, I think my mom taught me from an early age that anywhere in life, there are people who are going to be neglected and overlooked. right? Because I was one of those kids. Like I didn't get picked for the kickball team. I was like a shrimp of a kid, right? Like like someone could just knock me over with that kickball. And so I came home one day, I was really sad, and my mom was like, "What happened?" And I was like, "I didn't get picked for the team." And she was like, "Were you the only one?" And I said, "No, there were a handful of us that, didn't get picked." And so she was like, "Well, tomorrow, if you don't get picked again, I want you to go, and all the other kids who don't get picked, I want you to go and start your own game and have so much fun that all the other kids are going to want to play your game." And I was like, "Okay," like I'm like 5 or 6 or something like that.
Right.
And so I do it, and like everyone felt included and loved, and it was just like this amazing experience. And I came home, I'm telling this from my mom's, story, because I don't actually remember this.
Right.
But my mom said that I came home the next day and I was just a transformed little girl, I was like so happy and excited. And she's like, "So what happened?" And I was like, "I started my own team and everyone wanted to play, and like, everyone was happy and excited, and we had a great time." And so I think that was probably my first lesson in inclusiveness, right? Like how much it matters to make sure that people don't feel alone or isolated. Um, and throughout my whole life, I've just kind of like been aware of emotions and empathy. Like, I mean, I think part of that was my childhood, and my parents didn't have a healthy relationship, so I was always on high alert with emotions, and like I don't want to set my parents off, and so there's that piece of it. But then, I would say I went through my first loss when I was 8. Um, then, and it was like a grandparent type figure.
Hmm.
Um, then I lost my grandpa to a heart attack. Um, and then it was my aunt to cancer. Then it was my dog, who was like my sister, because I'm an only child. And my dog I got when I was 5, so she was with me my entire life, essentially, that I could remember. Um, and that kind of brought me to college, where it was like, okay, I'm on my own. I I see that people are still hurting. I see that people are still getting left out. And also too, when I lost my aunt, um, no one talked to me about it, and I didn't have a space to process that. And so I actually did not, I don't really think I grieved her loss until really I had to go through my own daughter's diagnosis and loss. And so my daughter, my husband and I met in college. We dated through college, got married after college, and we got pregnant like right after our 1 year anniversary. And so we were like, we literally toasted to no babies on our 1 year anniversary, because his parents got pregnant with him like on their honeymoon. And so we were like, we made it a year. And then like 2 months later, I was like, "Oh, just kidding." Surprise. And so we were like, okay, we're going to be young parents. This will be great. We'll be like the cool parents who can still go skiing with their kids. Anyway, so at 2 months old, we got her diagnosis. And really at 1 month old, I noticed something wasn't quite right, which led us to the diagnosis. And it was really tough. It was just like a sucker punch, and the worst news any parent could ever hear. It's your kid's gonna die. And there's nothing you can do about it, right? There's no cure, there's no treatment. And so basically go home and love her and give her the best life you can, and make her as comfortable as you can. So that was at 2 months old. And at 10 months old, we were on hospice. And we actually had like a couple months there in between that were like really good, really special. Made some great memories. We had a friend gift us a portrait session, which had a profound impact on me. And then we were on hospice. We called a researcher, because we're big organ donor believers. And we were like, hey, all of her organs are crap, because this is a degenerative disease, so they can't use anything. But you've dedicated your career to researching SMA. Like, would you need anything from her body to further your research? And if so, you're welcome to take it. And so at 10 months old, she was like, well, why are you calling me? And I was like, well, I told you we're on hospice. And she was like, there's more you can do. And so that one phone call actually doubled our daughter's life. And so that researcher stepped in and took over our care she was in Utah at the time. And so she managed our care remote from Utah, and we had 21 months with our daughter before we actually had to say goodbye. So that was pretty amazing. But through that time is really when, to your point, that I learned, one, I was 25 when she was diagnosed. I was 27 when she passed away. And I was horrified that I had made it to adulthood. I'm a grown woman and I have no clue what to do with my grief, with my feelings, with my emotions. And I felt so lost and overwhelmed. And I was like, my husband and I are both overachievers. We're both like nerdy, smart kids, like we did sports, we did music, we did, science clubs, we did, we were involved in so much. We came from very privileged homes. And so for us, it was like, gosh, like we had access to almost anything we wanted. And we still weren't taught. Like we were involved in neighborhood stuff. We did neighborhood tennis and, community things. We did church stuff. It was like, we were involved in so much that at some point we should have been taught this, right? And so we were sitting there baffled of just like, every system has failed us. Like this is core to being human. Like we all suffer loss, death and taxes, right? Like the two guarantees in life. And so how did we get this far and not know how to grieve? And none of our friends know how to support us. It's not just about us, it's also about the support network, because we had so many friends just disappear. And it wasn't their fault. They just didn't know what to say, what to do. They felt scared.
I don't know how.
They felt overwhelmed. Yeah. And so they were like, this is too much. I'm stepping away. And it was like, wow, like we really need people right now. Like we are in the worst time of our lives. This is the worst time to abandon us. But also I get it, and it's awkward and it can be scary. And so that's really what led me to create Love Not Lost, was because I saw this great, really void in our society where we all go through loss and we all hurt and we all grieve, and no one's teaching us how to do it. No one's teaching us how to heal, and no one's teaching the community how to support each other. So I started Love Not Lost just with pictures, because that portrait session that was given to us was so impactful in my healing journey that I was like, this is something I can do to help other people. I can show up and take pictures for people. I was a photographer. My background's graphic communications. And so I was like, if I can take pictures for people, I can create memories and like really freeze time for people before they lose their loved one, and then give them prints that can create a safe place for them to feel. They can sit with their loved one. They can hold them when they're not here to hold. They can ugly cry with them. They can talk to them. They can do all of these things that you might not feel comfortable doing in front of another human. And so it creates this like safe place just to be free and feel. And what I found was that was actually what was healing. And so anyway, that's how I started Love Not Lost, was just offering portrait sessions to anyone facing a terminal diagnosis. And over the past 6.5 years, we've really expanded to try and fill that void of the support tools and the education and, teaching people how to heal and then how to support others.
Right. That is beautiful. Thank you for what you do.
Yeah.
And I'll correlate this to something that I've been researching a lot lately, and it's been outside of my work, which is about 14 hours a day. This is what I'm researching on trauma recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And in trauma, specifically, if you've had lots of trauma over your life, then when you remember it, when it gets triggered, you feel as if you were in that particular case scenario. And losing loved ones is traumatic scarring. It scars your brain, and we don't have any kind of system for grieving, or even grief teaching. And is that because everybody grieves a little bit differently, or is it just because we don't want to talk about it because it's hard and we all get a little teary-eyed when we have this conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because we do all grieve differently, right? We all grieve differently, but the ways in which
And
we
probably
support.
wrong, because we're not grieving in a healing way, right?
Yeah, well, and so some people are and some people aren't. I think the problem is because there's no standard, there's no teaching of it. There are some people who um, have misdirection, right? Oh, just have another drink, just have another piece of cake, just have another whatever, to make
I'm
yourself
I'm
feel
I'm
better,
this guilt.
right?
I'm wildly guilty of all of those problems.
Yeah. And then it's like, so, that's a dangerous road to go down. But then also there's people who, again, with good intentions, give advice like, oh, just stay busy and you won't feel it. Just pour yourself into work, pour yourself into your kids, pour yourself into something else and you won't feel it. But feeling is healing. And so to heal, we have to grieve. To grieve, we have to feel.
Mhm.
And to feel, we have to be present. And so I think the biggest thing that we struggle with, and to your point with trauma, when we experience trauma, we are disconnecting from ourselves. Like our brain actually disconnects to protect ourselves, right? Because it's like you're going through a traumatic event. I'm here to protect you. And so I'm going to like shut the prefrontal cortex off and we're just going to stay in the amygdala, which is our survival mode. And so it's like very much because I'm a super nerd and I watch trauma seminars and books, and I've done a lot of research there too.
Yes.
But and it's so critical, right? Because if we're going to, like, if you brought me a computer and you were like, hey, this computer isn't working the way it should, can you fix it or can you help me get it back to how it was? I would look at it and be like, have you turned it off and turned it back on? But I don't know what a circuit board looks like. I don't know which wires go where. Like, I don't know how to help you. And so
Right.
for me, I've spent the last decade just pouring into research on trauma and healing and the brain body connection and the gut and all of it, because we all have that interconnectedness. And if we're going to help people heal, we have to understand how it works. And
Right.
so what I'm seeing in the world right now, and this is to your point on the grieving and healing, is especially trauma. We have collective trauma that we're experiencing as a world with war and famine and natural disasters, but also in our country with racism and hatred and gun violence. And, we have like the opioid crisis, we have the suicide rise, addiction, like so much. And so we have all of this collective trauma, and then we have individual trauma, right? Like things that we've gone through in our own personal lives. And so what I'm seeing is that as we are traumatized, and whether it's a big T or a little t, it's, you go through events and your brain goes into survival mode. Well, when you're in survival mode, you're not thinking at all with the front of your brain, which is rational thinking, where you process emotions and feelings and stuff like that. You're in fight, flight, freeze, fawn mode. It's like, I'm just here to survive. And that is very self-centered.
Firefighter mode.
Yeah. And it's very self-centered, which is appropriate, right? Because it's like, I'm here for life or death. I need to look at me and only me because I need to survive. So in that place, it's really hard to pause and think about other people. And so what I'm seeing in the world right now is we have so many people who are hurting, right? It's not that we're living with a bunch of assholes, it's not that like everyone wakes up trying to like hurt people. Like, I don't
Right.
think people wake up and they're like, I'm going to cause pain today, but they wake up and they're already hurting and they're just in survival mode and they're coming from a place of pain. And so if the littlest thing happens, maybe they get bumped walking in the hallway, or someone cuts them off in traffic, or, whatever it is, there's no space for grace. There is no space for pausing and thinking, wow, that person might be hurting too. And so instead we just react, and our brain is in that survival mode. We react and we have more pain, right? Because we're lashing out, we're, pulling a gun on someone
Mm-hmm.
or whatever it is that goes down. And then just the pain cycle continues. And so what Love Not Lost is trying to do is we're trying to meet people in that pain with love. And we believe that love brings healing. And so if we can meet the pain with love and really teach people that you're not a bad person. You're not a jerk. You're not an asshole. You're not trying to be mean to people, even though you are. it's, it's like, and some people aren't, some people are just internalizing all of it, but it's like, you're still operating from a place of pain that is not allowing you to heal. And so if we can meet that with love and teaching people how to love themselves, then we can transform those cycles of pain that are spiraling out into the world into cycles of healing. And so really that's our core mission, is to really help people heal from whatever pain they've experienced, any type of loss, like parents divorcing, moving communities, losing jobs. Like there's so many other losses that we can grieve and really get stuck in this pain victim mindset, instead of, healing and operating from a place of love.
Absolutely. And there's so many benefits to going there for the world, not just the person, but the world. Unfortunately, you can live in that amygdala lizard brain for a very, very, very long time and not even be aware, because it's just comfortable, right? There's no pain there. You're living, and but it's not healthy long term. And you're right that's I teach. I've got about 60 young kids that I teach how to box, and we talk all the time about responding, not reacting, right?
Yeah.
So taking that deep breath in, taking the time to respond to something instead of just reacting to it, which is huge.
So good.
And I think in grief, I think people are better at it than other times, right? Because they know that they don't say anything. They just stand there a lot of times, and it's because they don't know what to say, right? And my personal belief there is I just let them know, if you need anything, let me know, and then I back off, right? And then hopefully, and I've had people do that before. They've reached out, and I've helped them as what I could, and but most of the time they don't reach out. They just stay there.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point, because oftentimes one of the most common phrases we hear in people supporting others is, let me know if you need anything. But the struggle with that for someone grieving is they usually, like, brain fog is real in grief, because your brain, again, is in survival mode. You've suffered a loss. You're, just sorting through things. And so oftentimes, like, someone's not going to typically know off the top of their head, like, oh yeah, actually I need this. So they're not going to say anything in the moment. But then if they think of something a week later, it can feel really awkward to ask for something if that offer was made a week ago, or to even reach out and ask for help. Like, reaching out and asking for help is so hard. Starting a nonprofit, starting a business, like, you have to ask for help, right? Like, you have to ask for help. And so, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs are forced to get uncomfortable, because you have to do a lot of things to be uncomfortable to have success,
Right.
But as a grieving person, if you haven't cultivated that need and the being of uncomfortable, like, if you're not used to being uncomfortable, it can feel really, really hard and awkward to ask for help. So that's why we created the How Can I Love You Better tool, because if you make the offer via email, then it's a lot easier to respond a week later, and say, actually, yeah, if you can help me, that would be great. But also, the full responsibility isn't put back on the griever, because again, it's like, let me know if you need anything could be like hard for them to remember, and then again, the responsibility is on them to reach out. So just having something sitting in their inbox with a button to reply is a lot easier than re-engaging in person. So, we are really trying to look at all the different areas where there are gaps in our communication and in our connectedness as a society, and try and create tools to just make that easier and make it more effective in that help. So we're hoping that, give it a try. If you have feedback on how we can make it better, like please email me, find me on LinkedIn, whatever it is, just let us know. We're always, looking to make improvements and develop new tools and resources to help our community and our society.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for doing that. It's a service that the world absolutely needs, and teaching people how to grieve and how to navigate around people that are grieving better is, I've never even heard of such a service at all, right? It's generally like you got some, post support groups here and there. They meet in the basement of churches and stuff like that. It's not
Yeah.
a great place to be anyway. So I think it's amazing what you're doing, and thank you so much for doing that for the world. We
Yeah.
definitely need it.
Thank you.
I think the universe, that I've never had to go through losing a child, but I'm no stranger to loss. I've lost a couple of nephews and
Mm,
stepfather and stuff like that.
yeah.
And I'm going to ask you this question because you've done research in the grieving process and in the trauma research area. Is therapy like EMDR something that grieving
Mhm.
people can use to help
Yeah.
overcome, separate the fact? And it sounds bad because EMDR is to say, hey, this isn't happening anymore. I'm going to leave that trauma in the past, and I'm going to live presently in my daily life today. You don't want to forget the people that you've lost, or
Right.
separate from them like you would from
Right.
trauma, or even create new narratives for them. So you have experience in that, and can you talk on that?
Absolutely. I've actually done EMDR myself, for my past trauma, and it's very, very helpful. I don't think that it's a widely, like, EMDR is very, excuse me, EMDR is very specific to trauma. And so if you've gone through loss that maybe wasn't traumatic, like for example, me losing that grandparent figure when I was 8 wasn't really traumatic. It was like she was like 90 something years old, it was like
Yeah, I
expected.
mean, I'm telling you, I lost an aunt. We
Mhm.
had her funeral last week, and she was 90, and I was like, man, she had a really great run, and you're proud of it. But when you start really researching trauma and loss,
Mhm.
all trauma's equal. Like,
Mhm.
so
And the trauma is really
your
how your
parents, you
body,
saw your parents going through that stuff, and
right.
you don't have any
And it's
idea
how
what the
your body
impact really is.
processes it. Yeah, so, like, I could experience one loss and you could experience the same loss, so to speak, and and for you, it might be traumatic, for me, it might not be, and vice versa. So it's like, um,
Okay.
you know, like, it's how we process, and I think one of the core things is how we're supported through it, right? Like, if we feel alone and abandoned and we don't have someone to support us, that could be very traumatic. And so I could lose my dog, and that's traumatic for me, because I didn't have anyone to talk to, like, I wasn't there. It was like this, crazy thing. But someone else could lose their dog and it wouldn't be traumatic because they felt supported, they felt loved, and it was, like they had
Okay.
preparation for it, so it's not about the type of loss that's traumatic. It's about how your body processes it and the experience that you went through and how your body internalized it, and the narrative that was, being told to yourself. So I think that's really important to know that, like, it doesn't matter the type of loss. It could still be traumatic or not based on your body's experience. So with that, if you do feel like you've experienced trauma, like, absolutely find a therapist. EMDR is great. There are other somatic practices that are really helpful. Um, Cranial sacral therapy is one, because again, trauma is really held in the body. So just standard talk therapy is probably not going to be as effective, as a somatic approach, and getting into the body, whether it's, EMDR, for those who don't know what that stands for, it's eye movement desensitization reprocessing. Um, and it's like, cross body activity. So, eye movement, you're going back and forth. You can also hold buzzers and stuff, but basically it's going from the left and right side of your brain to connect the hemispheres and be able to reprocess those memories. So yes, I think trauma therapy is so helpful, and it can be really helpful in tandem with grief processing. But also, like, a lot of grief really is about, like I said, to grieve, really to heal and grieve, we have to grieve and feel, and feeling requires us to be present. And that is the biggest struggle in our society right now. Like, I mean, how many hours do you scroll on Instagram every day? Like I do. And it's a
Are
disconnection,
you
right?
saying I'm not present when I'm just scrolling through my TikToks?
No, you are not.
No, I'm not. Oh
And
man,
so, and we can have
my wife
moments
was
of
right.
presence. We can have moments of presence, right? So like I purposely follow therapists and like somatic practitioners and stuff like that on my Instagram. So I know when at least I'm wanting to check out, I'm getting helpful information. um, but it's one of those things where it's like, the news, drinking, work, like there's so many avenues of checking out, right? Um,
Mhm.
and so when we check out, we're not feeling, we're not staying present, and we're disconnecting from our bodies. When we do that, we can't feel and we can't heal. And so the sad part is, one thing that I was never taught in school is that our bodies are designed to heal. And our bodies can heal if we just allow them to heal. But by disconnecting, we're actually preventing the healing process from happening. And so that's why when people with the best intentions say like, oh, just pour yourself into work or pour yourself into, volunteering, even like something good.
Right.
It's like, do something good with your grief. It's like, well, that's great. But if you're not feeling it, and if you're not making space to really heal, then really you're just distracting, and it's going to come back and bite you in the butt later. And at
Right.
some point, and this is the other thing, it's like, if you don't actually do the work to feel and to heal and to dig through those really uncomfortable feelings and emotions, then like at least if you're intentional about that work, you can kind of at least somewhat control when that happens, like with a therapist, or like at your house if you're journaling, or if you're reading a book or whatever it is. But if you don't deal with it and you get triggered out in the world, like, I mean, you could just like combust into tears in a minute and have like a super humiliating experience, because all of that was just waiting to explode out of you.
Right.
And it found the right trigger moment to like finally force you to feel. And that's the thing. It's like our bodies are working with us, but if we're not working with them, it will force us to rest. It will force us to feel. And, I think a lot of illness in our society right now is forced rest. Of just like, hey, you need to chill out, and you're gonna like be leveled out for 2 weeks so you can just lay in bed and feel things. So yeah, I think there's a lot of
Absolutely.
work to be done.
That's it for today's show, folks. If you'd like to join my text line community, the number is 314-370-2871. All you have to do to join that text line is send me any question about business or technology. I'll do all the research, and I'll give you an absolutely free, totally unbiased answer. Get to work.